So just a quick disclaimer before I jump into the main part of this presentation. This is kind of early for me. I don't sort of mix the words creative and morning, and especially not happiness, in my head. So if I doze off, throw something at me, and hopefully I'll get back onto my script. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Persson. I'm one of the founders and also the chief creative officer of an agency called Greatworks, based here in Stockholm. We do advertising, we do design, we do a lot of digital stuff. And on the side, angel invest in technology sort of companies. So that's my hobby in a way. So when Richard invited me to come here to present, I was honored because I love creative mornings. I love the concept. I've been to a few of them myself. But that the theme was happiness, I became a bit afraid because the farthest you can come from Dalai Lama or Deepak Chopra or these. So my gut reaction was to call in sick and just wait for the next theme, whatever that be. But then I started to think about happiness in the context of work actively, which obviously I do. And I started to think especially about balance. And this theme of balance, of course, is something that is ever present in the world of activity. Design, obviously, craft, when you write things, but also life. And usually when you hear about balance and think about balance in the context of work, it's about this theme of life-work balance, a life puzzle. And obviously, or maybe not obviously, but obviously for me, I'm no expert in this either. I'm maybe an expert in working. I maybe sort of neglect the life part every now and then. So I figured I would speak about this slightly different theme today, which is work balance. Because we all know, working creatively, that all work and no play makes Jack or Jill a dull boy or a girl from the chair. And I think just like many of you, my work comes from as a hobby. This picture is from 1990. I love the way I've coordinated the binders with the curtains, by the way. So I was super passionate about computers. I was passionate about creating stuff with computers, both using code, but especially using design and creation and things like that. So it all started as a passion, as a hobby. And I think when something is a hobby, it's always fun because it dictates everything, how and when and what you do. So this was a big part of my life, and in '97, when I started working, it became an even bigger part of my life. So my entry point into work was this idea of working in a very passionate way as a hobby. In '97, I had been working for some agencies before, but in '97, me and a bunch of friends founded one of the first creatively oriented digital agencies in Scandinavia called Say. As you can see here, it was very passionately driven. Every time we did a new project, it was a first, pretty much, because the medium was so new and explored the boundaries in every project we did. So what drove us was pretty much that what was possible yesterday suddenly was possible today. So every time something was groundbreaking, at least to us. And then I think we grew up and the medium grew up, and this notion of just driven by lust and by passion, it sort of turned into something else. So after a while we had work and hobby work, maybe fun projects, and a bit more boring projects. And I think especially back then, half of our clients had a fantastic experience with working with us as an age speedway. And the other half had the crappiest experience ever, because that was the way I did projects. We've done this before, we'll just do it for the money, and this is fun, try to do something new. So for me, this division between work and work has always been in creating same old things and creating new things. And creating new things can be for a client, it can be time I set aside to play around with a new technology or a new piece of software, or learn something, or read a book, but it can also be work for clients that are new in one shape or form. You have this feeling that you develop or progress. So in a way, my enemy has always been this. If it's just work and work, that wouldn't be that much of fun. So I always try to protect the hobby side of work, or the passionate side of work. This is extremely important, especially if you think about how the advertising world or the design world, or I think any part of the creative world works. I didn't create this, I have seen it before, but this shows the progression of a designer. When you're a designer, you're very close to making stuff. You're very hands-on in a way. You see all the software programs you're using. And then as you progress, if you look at progression, when you become an art director and an associate creative director, stuff like that, you become farther and farther away, become more and more detached from the actual craft. But then, of course, other areas emerge. You might get to manage people, which might be fun. You might be able to recruit. You might meet more clients. But to me, I think if you're not careful, you can detach yourself from the work on this journey. And I'm not sure about the champagne bottle on the chief creative officer there. So if you mind, and again, I'm no expert in this, it's just a theme I was given, but if you wouldn't mind, I would give you 3 perspectives on sort of maintaining this balance and protecting this notion of hobby work or passion work, and especially working in the industry for more than 15 years, how you do it over time. Because I think in the beginning, it comes naturally, but you work actively to do it over time. So I've got 3 perspectives in this presentation, and in each perspective I have a few sort of insights or things that might be relevant to you too. And the first one is kind of obvious. If it's important to have the time to do things on your own, you have to create time, because it usually doesn't come by itself. In the beginning it might come by itself, but after years you will have to create this time. And obviously in some ways it comes naturally, like Google. Back in they had this of the 20% time where all the Google employees could work, or the engineers could work one day a week with their own projects. And as far as I know, they don't do this anymore in like an institutional way, but it's now hardwired into the DNA of the culture of the company. But for those of us not working for a Google or some company like that, there's usually a certain amount of selling involved. You have to convince someone that you want to spend time, maybe time that someone else pays for yourself. And in some cases you dedicate your spare time, but in some cases you want to do this on your work time. And this is from experience, both from convincing my boss and having people in my team convincing me. I think it's wise to ask yourself, what are the incentives for the company to give you the time? What's in it for the company? And it could be a better version of you. You grow and you become a better person for the company. It could be that you are offering equity. If you have an idea that you realize, you could offer equity to your company, saying that I will own 50%, but become a partner of this, that I'm investing my own time in as well. And I can also go the harsh way and say, if I don't get this time, I'll go someplace else to get this time. So some selling, and think about, as always in communication, about the receiver, what's in it for the receiver. And then when you have time, I think it's about finding it sort of calendar-wise. And some might work good in the morning, obviously. I don't. I work best in the nights. But it's wise to have this sort of set time for continuity's sake. So you do every week or every day or every month or however often you want to do this. And I think this is also from a company perspective, because if you say, I want 3 hours a week to learn how to apps, for instance, and you say, plus I will also invest every Thursday night, it feels like you're in it together. It's like co-investing in this idea of you taking the next step. And even though I co-own my company, I still do this because sometimes if there are many people around the table, some people might feel not focusing on the right things or something like that. So I've been talking with the people around me. So every Wednesday afternoon, I spend 3 hours in creating this application to sort of stay up to date with technology trends and stuff like that. And then I spend the whole night with a group of friends in creating this application called And on Slide. And I've been doing that now for 1.5 years, and I'm not really sure if we ever will release this piece of software, but it's a great way of sort of dedicating time to something that you're passionate about and you learn and this. Keep it sacred, also kind of obvious. And I think this is hard in a consultancy agency because there's this notion of client work always coming first. And to negotiate with your boss and even yourself, that if there is an task from someone else, to be able to say, I don't have time right now because I'm working on a thing which is not a client thing, but it's important and I have sort of aligned this the boss or whatever. And then it's this thing of making it happen and sort of taking leaps in whatever you do. And that I've done is to force myself. It's this idea of sort of finding a partner, doing it together with other people, because if you do it together with other people, someone will get disappointed if you don't show up or if you don't do it. You don't just disappoint yourself, but also other people. And it's the same thing with having a mentor, sort of meeting a person every month to report how far you've come. That's, in many cases, an incentive to sort of take the next step and actually do it. And then you can present. If you work for a company, you can sort of, every month you can say, I would like to present how far I've come on a Thursday afternoon and just show the other people, or book a public presentation, go to one of the meetups and say, in 1 month I will show people how far I've come. So then I have to force myself to do some stuff up until then. So that's the first thing in creating time. Maybe obvious, but I think it's hard, and especially the selling part. The second one is keeping the focus when you're on board, because when you have the time, I think the first few weeks or months will go by themselves. It's kind of easy to get started, but I think it's endurance that is the hardest part. So this part is obviously about minimizing distractions and keeping focus, or keeping the flow, as it's referred to, coined by this guy with super weird name. And when doing research for this presentation, I stumbled upon a study conducted by 2 Harvard researchers in 2010 that stated that whatever people were doing, they tend to be happier if they focus on the activity instead of thinking about something else, which also is kind of obvious, but still, if you think about what you at a certain point when you're in front of the computer or in front of the phone or the pen or whatever your creative expression might be, you're usually doing a lot of things, social media, email, talking to people. So I think this notion of focus is extremely important. So the first step here is, of course, to identify your main distraction. And for me, my main distraction is email. I'm addicted to email. At the beginning, when I had notifications on my icon in the computer, it said you have 3 new. I had to check. So I turned that off, and also turned off the notifications you see on the screen if I get a new email. And other people might have other distractions like the phone or media or instant messaging. So I think when focusing, turn that off and force yourself not to turn it on again. And if that's hard, there are certain computer programs that help you. This is one I've been playing around with called Concentrate, which allows you to create activities. So I can say, I want to do design now for 1 hour, or to fill out my sheet, or to write. And I can say, during the time I design, the only application I use in my computer is Illustrator and Photoshop, nothing else. If I try to open the web browser or log on to it won't allow me. And the same thing for filling out your timesheets and things like that. It works. And there's one free version, and then there's one paid version. So play around with that. It works. And some other things, I've been playing around with a lot of different techniques and stuff. There's this thing called the Pomodoro technique that you might have heard about, which is this, started out as an analog thing in the beginning. There's an Italian dude in the 80s who came up with this. And the idea is that you work in 25 sessions, and then you take 3 to 4 minute breaks in between. And then after 25 minutes, you take a longer break. And during the sessions, you should work as free from distractions as you can. And there are certain computer programs and apps and stuff like that using this technique as well. It doesn't really work for me, but I have friends and colleagues in the office who use the technique. And the thing I do, which is a bit more rudimentary, is that computer, there are ways to create various accounts. So I have one account which is my main. That's the account where I have my email, I have my calendar, I have all the files. That's where I do like the normal work. But then when I want to focus, I have another user. So I switch to this other called the test user, where I don't have email and I don't have the calendar. So it's basically working on a computer with no distractions at all. And this works for me. So I switch to that computer, I work an hour or two, and then I switch back to the other computer and check my email and things like that, which be more focused and hopefully more happy. And since this worked, so I've been taking it one step even further, and I think this also has to do with me being a tech, but I bought 2 of everything. So I have 2 iPads, one work iPad, one play iPad, and so forth, which is also a great way to not bring work into the bedroom, read on your iPad and stuff like that, so you don't check your email just before you go to bed. I'm talking to a psychologist about this, and this idea of having, like if you have 2 iPads, it could be the same model, but just 2 different colors, so you associate the different physicals with 2 different things. So the black iPad is work, the white iPad is play, or whichever. Works for me, kind of expensive though. And the third one is the most hard one. It's to keeping the fun over time, because usually being creative, you get psyched up and pumped up in the beginning, and then you have to sort of keep it fun. And I think in the beginning, when I started working, I had this idea that I wanted to get all the ideas out as fast as possible, so I, in a way, focused on all ideas and tried to execute all ideas I got, which was interesting. It doesn't work, because then you start working on something, and then you start working on something else, and then after a while you have like 10 half-baked projects, and I think that's the case. Even though I like that idea better than the people who just talk about their ideas or do anything at all about them, which I think is even worse. So what I realized was that it'd be meaningful to me. I mean, I can come up with a fantastic idea about, I don't know, Stockholm Fire Department should work, but I'm not passionate about fire protection, so I shouldn't get involved. So finding something meaningful is important. And I realized that great ideas are stubborn in a way. So if you write all your ideas down, a good idea will come back many times. Almost so much so you don't have to write the ideas down, because you will know if the knocks on your door 10, 15 times, you know that this idea means something. This is an idea I should try to realize or execute. So in a way, we have the best to do in our heads in terms of knowing what to do. And then obviously breaking in, trying to create everything at once, I think is also something that I've tried to do a lot of times, and that makes it intangible and very hard. I mean, if you have this horizon of a year, where should I start? And then you do something else instead. So you think this game, for instance, if you're programming a game for an iPhone, maybe your goal shouldn't be create this game. Maybe the first goal should be create the main character. And then the second goal should be make the character move on the screen. And the third goal, make the character jump onto different platforms. And then after a month or two, you have something that resembles a game. Which brings us to the third and final point, which I think is the most important point and has worked the best for me. And I've stolen this from a great that I think you all should read if you work creatively, called The War of Odds, written by a guy called Steven Pressfield, and he is a Hollywood writer. He's a script writer. He's writing movies, scripts for films, and it's great. The 7 first chapters are great before he starts talking about sort of supernatural stuff and things like that. But the 7 first, and he argues that you should always try to give yourself a cliffhanger when you work, just like in movies. So if you, like me, work every Wednesday, if you're getting close to having a breakthrough, you just solve a problem, or you just realized something, or you got this within the idea, you should stop, because that makes you excited to go back next week to continue the work. And I think this is a pretty common way of working for authors. So if you say that you're working 3 hours every day as an author, then you sort of put down the pen 3 hours sharp, and especially if you're on the sort of a verb thing, because that makes it more fun to get back the next time. And there are a lot of sort of models and techniques that's based on this premise. This is one developed by Seinfeld, apparently, called Don't Break the Chain. And this idea is to try to get addicted to putting crosses in a calendar, just like that. Every day, you create a list of goals for that day, and if you be able to cross all the goals off, you reward yourself by putting a cross in the calendar, and then that gets addictive in a way. I tried this. It worked when I was in the office, but if I weren't in the office one day and I came back and the cross was missing, I was depressed. So those were the 3 things. Works for me, might work for you. Again, I'm no Deepak Chopra, so what do I know? Just one more tip. If you're using an iPhone, I just stumbled upon this application that was released this morning called Mailbox, which is that I think would help me focus more. It's like a to-do list built into the email application. The whole thing is that usually when you get email with tasks and stuff like that, you have to figure out what should you put on your to-do list. Should you just reply? Should you just do nothing at all? And here, connected to each and every message, you can say, I want to reply to this later today, or this weekend, or in a month, or whatever. So it's in a way a to-do list and the email application built together. And the goal here is to create something they themselves out as the EURPHORIC inbox, which I think sounds kind of nice. Mailbox app for iPhone. So that's it. Hopefully some piece of advice on maintaining the work balance, create time, focus, and keeping the. So that was it. Thank you.